The battlefield was silent, not the silence of peace, but the silence that comes after chaos. Smoke rose in thin black lines. The ground was burned and broken. The air smelled of fire, ash, and fear. The war simulation had ended. The alien soldiers were gone. Their ships had pulled back into the sky, leaving only dust in their wake. But not everyone had left. On the broken field, 47 small figures remained. Cubs, the young of many alien species. Some were covered in fur, others in scales. A few had soft feathers on their heads. Their shapes were different, but all of them had the same look in their eyes. Fear. The cubs cried out. The sounds were strange, each voice unique to its species. Some let out high chirps. Others gave low growls. A few made soft clicking noises. Together, it became a storm of frightened sounds that echoed across the battlefield. They had been abandoned. The adults had walked away without a glance. To the alien commanders, this was normal. In their culture, weakness had no place. If a cub could not survive on its own, then it did not deserve survival at all. It was cruel, but it was the way things had always been. From the observation deck high above, alien generals spoke coldly as they watched the little ones stumble across the dirt. "They are useless," one said. "They will not last an hour," another replied. "Leave them. This is a law of strength. Only the strong should remain." The cubs tried to huddle together. Small claws and paws reached out for comfort. One youngling, no older than a few months, cried until its tiny body shook. Another crawled across the dirt, searching for its mother, but there was no mother left to find. And then someone stopped walking. Sergeant Daniel Reeves, a human soldier, froze in place. His boots were heavy with mud and ash. His uniform burned in places from the battle. He should have kept walking like the others. The simulation was over. His orders were clear: return to the base, leave the field, and wait for the next mission. But Reeves did not move. His eyes locked on the cubs. He saw them struggling, falling, their little hands and claws sinking into the dirt as they tried to stand. He saw one cub too weak to move, lying flat on its side as if waiting for death. And he saw all the others crying for someone, anyone, to come back. His chest tightened. The voices of the alien commanders reached his ears. "Move on, human," one ordered. "Do not waste your time," another said. "They are not your problem." Reeves did not answer. He looked down at the smallest cub, a fragile creature with wide, wet eyes. It gave a weak cry and stretched out a trembling hand toward him. The human's jaw clenched. He bent down slowly, ignoring the gasps from the alien generals. He extended his finger. The cub's tiny hand closed around it with surprising strength. Reeves felt that small grip, and in that instant, he knew his decision. He whispered under his breath, words no one else could hear. "Not on my watch." He moved closer to the group of cubs. Some pulled back in fear when the tall human approached, but others leaned forward, desperate for protection. Reeves crouched down so they could see his face. "It's all right," he said softly, even though they could not understand his language. "I've got you." The cubs quieted for a moment, listening to his calm tone. One by one, they shuffled toward him as if sensing safety. Their small bodies pressed against his boots, their cries turning to soft whimpers. From above, the alien commanders were furious. "This is against the rules. The simulation is finished. Remove the human at once." But Reeves ignored them all. His eyes never left the cubs. He began to gather them, lifting one into his arms, then another. The weight was heavy, but he held them close, steady and firm. 47 lives. 47 small, helpless beings, all left to die, and one human who refused to walk away. The battlefield was still dangerous. Machines and predators still lurked in the ruins. But Reeves did not think of himself. He thought only of the little ones who clung to him, looking up with trust in their wide eyes. He had made his choice. And once a human makes a choice like that, nothing in the universe can make him turn back. For the first time, the abandoned cubs were not alone. They had someone to fight for them. They had a protector. They had a human. The alien commanders could not believe what they were seeing. From their high observation deck, they leaned closer to the glowing screens, their faces twisted in shock. A human soldier, Sergeant Daniel Reeves, was kneeling in the dirt, lifting alien cubs into his arms. "This is madness," one commander hissed. "He has broken protocol." Another snapped. "No species interferes once the simulation ends. It is forbidden." Yet Reeves was not listening to any of them. He held 2 cubs against his chest, their tiny bodies trembling. Another 3 clung to his legs, refusing to let go. He bent down and gently brushed the dirt from a small cub's feathered head. His touch was soft, almost fatherly, though these children were not his own and not even of his kind. "Easy now," he murmured, his voice low and steady. "You're safe with me." The cubs could not understand his words, but they felt the tone. Their cries grew quieter. Their shaking slowed. Reeves looked at the rest of the group, dozens more staring up at him with wide, hopeless eyes. He swallowed hard. 47 lives. Could he carry them all? Could he even save one? Logic told him no. The battlefield was wide, dangerous, and full of hidden traps. His strength had limits. He was only one man. But something inside him refused to leave. The alien commanders activated their speakers, their voices booming across the ruined field. "Human, step away from the young. This is not your concern. Leave them and return to your base." "That is an order." Reeves tilted his head toward the sound, his jaw tight. His voice carried clear and sharp in reply. "Your rules don't matter," he said. "Not here, not to them." The cub in his arms whimpered and pressed its head against his chest. Reeves adjusted his grip and stood tall. Every eye in the observation deck locked on him. No other species had ever dared this. No one had defied the law of survival before. One commander growled, "He is weak. He will fall under the weight." Another muttered, "Or perhaps he is something different." On the battlefield, Reeves began to act. He tore strips of fabric from his damaged uniform and tied them into makeshift slings. With careful hands, he placed cubs against his sides, across his back, wherever he could secure them. He spoke softly as he worked, reassuring them even as sweat dripped down his face. "There you go. Hold tight. We're not stopping now. Not while I'm breathing." The cubs clung to him, their tiny claws digging into the cloth. One even tugged at his sleeve as if afraid he would vanish. Reeves gave it a faint smile. "Don't worry, kid. I'm not going anywhere." Step by step, he began to move forward. The ground was uneven, covered in craters and broken metal from the simulation's weapons. Each step jarred his muscles. Each movement pulled against the weight strapped to his body. His breath came hard and fast, but he kept going. Above him, the alien commanders watched in silence, some with disgust, some with wonder. "This cannot last," one muttered. "He will collapse before he reaches the halfway mark," another predicted. But Reeves did not collapse. He pressed on, shoulders straining, arms full of life too precious to abandon. The cubs trusted him now. Their frightened eyes followed his face. When he stumbled, they whimpered. When he steadied himself, they grew calm again. A bond was forming, fragile, but real. Suddenly, one cub slipped from the sling, falling toward the dirt. Reeves lunged down, catching it before it hit the ground. His knees slammed into the rubble with a painful crack, but he didn't care. He held the cub close, whispering quickly, "I've got you. I won't drop you." The cub pressed its forehead against his chin and went still, trusting completely. Reeves rose again, slower this time, but more determined than ever. The commanders spoke among themselves in hushed tones. Why? What drives him? He gains nothing. There is no honor, no victory, no reward. Then perhaps this is what makes humans dangerous. They act for reasons beyond survival. The battlefield stretched before Reeves like a gauntlet of trials. He could already see shadows moving at the far edges, automated predators, waiting for weakness. His orders had been simple. Walk away, leave the cubs behind, let nature and machines decide. But his heart had given him different orders. Every step was a vow. Every cub he carried was a promise. And every promise was unbreakable. By the time Reeves reached the edge of the first ridge, his body ached, his back screamed with pain, and his lungs burned for air. But he did not stop, because 47 alien cubs were alive, and they were not alone anymore. For the first time in their short lives, they had someone who refused to let go, someone who would fight the universe itself, if that's what it took, someone human. The battlefield stretched wide and broken before him, but Sergeant Daniel Reeves did not turn back. 47 alien cubs clung to him in every way they could. Small claws dug into his uniform. Feathered arms wrapped tight around his neck. Scaled tails curled around his shoulders. His body had become their shelter, their only shield against the vast emptiness of the ruined field. Every step was heavy. The weight of the cubs pulled on his back, pressed against his chest, and dragged at his legs. His muscles trembled. His breath came hard. But still he moved. The smallest cub, barely larger than a human infant, whimpered against his collar. Reeves shifted it carefully in his arm, rocking it gently as he walked. The movement was clumsy, but the cub calmed, closing its eyes with a soft, tired sigh. From a high observation deck, alien commanders leaned forward, unable to look away. "This is not possible," one whispered. "No soldier could carry so much," another said. "He will fail soon. He must." But Reeves did not fail. He adjusted, he adapted. When his arms were full, he tied cubs against his sides with torn strips of uniform. When his back ached, he crouched for a moment, letting the cubs rest on the ground while he stretched, only to pick them all up again. When his legs shook, he forced himself forward, whispering promises to the little ones who clung to him. "You're all right. I've got you. Stay close." The cubs began to understand, not his words, but his tone. The cries grew fewer. The fearful sounds faded into soft murmurs, almost like a chorus of hope. Reeves pushed on. His boots sank into the dirt, each step a battle. His shoulders burned under the load. Yet he did not slow. The alien generals shook their heads. Why? Why does he keep going? He gains nothing. No honor. No recognition. Perhaps humans are blind. They waste strength on the weak. But one commander, older and wiser, said nothing. His eyes narrowed as he studied the human. Something about this act disturbed him. It was not weakness he saw. It was something else, something dangerous. Reeves reached a broken stretch of battlefield. Sharp metal beams jutted out from the ground, remains of destroyed machines. The cubs whimpered as the path cut their small feet. Reeves knelt, pulling off the gloves from his hands. He slid them over the paws of two cubs, shielding them from the jagged edges. Then he lifted the others one by one, carrying them across the dangerous ground. His own palms bled as he pushed aside the shards, clearing a narrow path. The alien commanders stared in silence. "No one does this," one finally muttered. "No one but him," another replied. At the far side of the field, Reeves stumbled, His knees slammed into the dirt. The cubs clung tighter, terrified he might drop them. But Reeves did not let go. He caught himself, kept his arms strong, and whispered again, "Don't worry, babies. I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever." His voice was hoarse, his throat dry, but his words were steady. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself back to his feet. The cubs pressed their faces against him, silent now. For the first time, they were no longer crying. They trusted. The alien generals could not explain what they saw. Trust was not common among their kind. To them, young were burdens. To them, weakness was discarded. Yet here, before their eyes, weakness was protected with ferocity. Reeves walked on, step after step, the weight pressing him down but never breaking him. He was more than muscle, more than strength. He was will, and will could not be measured by numbers or weight. The sky rumbled above, a reminder that the simulation was still active. Shadows moved at the edges, predators circling, waiting for weakness. Reeves felt their presence but did not slow. His burden was heavy, but his purpose was heavier still. 47 lives, 47 beating hearts, 47 souls who depended on him alone. The thought drove him forward. Every commander watching knew the truth. The human could have walked away. He could have saved himself the pain, the blood, the exhaustion. No one would have judged him for leaving. That was the way of the galaxy. That was the law. But humans, they realized, lived by a different law. Reeves staggered again, sweat dripping into his eyes. He blinked hard, tightened his grip, and forced his legs to move. "Come on," he whispered to himself. One step more. One more. The cubs looked up at him with wide eyes, and though they could not speak his language, they understood his promise. He would not fail them. The alien generals fell silent. Even those who mocked him at the start could find no words now, for there was nothing weak about what they saw. There was only a human soldier, carrying the weight of 47 lives, and refusing to let a single one fall. The field was quiet, too quiet. Sergeant Daniel Reeves knew what that meant. The silence was not safety. It was warning. He shifted the cubs on his shoulders, tightening the fabric slings he had tied around his body. 47 small forms pressed close against him, their warmth both a comfort and a burden. His every muscle screamed under the weight, but he pressed forward. The cubs had stopped crying now. They watched him with wide eyes, sensing his tension. Their tiny bodies clung tighter. Some hid their faces against his chest. Others peeked over his arms, sniffing the air with fear. Reeves felt it too. The battlefield was not empty. Something moved in the ruins. From the high observation deck, alien commanders leaned forward. Their eyes glowed with cruel anticipation. "The predators will find him soon," one murmured. "Machines designed to hunt the weak," another said with satisfaction. "Let us see how long he lasts now." The battlefield had been seeded with automated predators, metallic beasts built for one purpose: to test survival. They had no mercy, no hesitation. They attacked anything that fell behind. And now they had found him. The first sound came from the shadows, a low metallic growl. Reeves froze, scanning the broken buildings. A pair of red eyes glowed in the darkness. Then another, and another. The machines stepped into the light. Their bodies were armored, their limbs sharp with claws of steel. They moved low to the ground, fast and silent. Their jaws dripped with oil, shaped to tear through flesh and bone. The cubs whimpered, pressing closer to Reeves. He whispered quickly, "Stay quiet, babies. Stay low." One predator lunged. Reeves spun, firing his rifle with one arm. The blast echoed, striking the machine in its chest. Sparks exploded, and the beast collapsed in a shower of smoke. But more came. 3, then 5, then 7. Reeves gritted his teeth. He could not drop the cubs. He could not set them down. His body was their shield, his arms their only safety. The next machine leapt high, claws flashing. Reeves shifted, turning his back to the blow. Metal claws raked across his armor, tearing deep into his shoulder. Pain seared through him, but he did not cry out. He pressed the cubs tighter against him and fired again, point blank. The beast screeched and fell lifeless at his feet. Blood ran down Reeves's arm, soaking into the fabric. His vision blurred for a moment. The weight of 47 young pressed heavy on him, but he stood firm. Above, the alien commander shouted, "Impossible! He shields him with his own body? No soldier would waste himself like this." But Reeves ignored them. He ignored the pain, the weight, the orders. All that mattered was the tiny lives that clung to him. Another predator lunged, jaw snapping. Reeves ducked, swinging his rifle like a club. Metal cracked against metal. Sparks flew. He jammed the barrel into Machine's neck and pulled the trigger. It collapsed, twitching in the dirt. The cubs cried out in fear. Reeves lowered his head and spoke softly, even as blood dripped from his side. "It's all right. I'm still here. I won't let them touch you." More shadows moved. The pack was circling him, waiting for weakness. Reeves steadied his stance, forcing himself to breathe. He knew he could not outlast them forever, but he would not fall easily. He fired again and again. Each shot a burst of light in the dark field. Each recoil jarred his body, but he did not falter. Machines fell, broken and burning, but more kept coming. The cubs began to watch him differently now. Their fear shifted into something else. One tiny cub, with scaled skin and sharp little teeth, bared its fangs at the predators, mimicking Reeves's courage. Another let out a high-pitched growl, as if trying to join the fight. Reeves managed a weak smile, even as sweat and blood mixed on his face. "That's it," he whispered. "Brave little ones. You're stronger than they know." The predators closed in for one final rush. Reeves planted his feet, rifle raised, heart pounding. He had no idea if he could survive the next minute, but he had already made his choice. If he fell, he would fall standing. If he bled, he would bleed as their shield. If he died, he would die with all 47 cubs still alive. The first predator leapt, and Reeves roared, his rifle blazing. From the observation deck, silence fell. The alien commanders could not believe what they saw. One human soldier, wounded and outnumbered, carrying the weight of 47 young, and still refusing to break. And in that moment, the galaxy began to understand. Humans were not like the others. They did not abandon the weak. They did not surrender to despair. They fought, even when there was no chance left. And that fight made them dangerous. The battlefield was not quiet anymore. Smoke still rose from shattered machines. The ground still trembled with the echoes of explosions, and the air carried the stench of oil and blood. But above all of that came the sound of footsteps, slow, heavy, uneven. Sergeant Daniel Reeves was still moving. 47 alien cubs clung to him in every way possible. His shoulders sagged under their weight. His back ached with fire. His arms felt as if they had been filled with stone. Each breath came ragged and raw, torn from his chest like a soldier dragging a wounded comrade across the dirt. And yet he walked. The cubs pressed close to him. Some dozed fitfully in their makeshift slings, lulled to sleep by the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Others clung tight, their wide eyes fixed on the shadows that still moved at the edge of the battlefield. The predators were gone for now, but Reeves knew they were not finished. The simulation would not allow him an easy escape. There would be more traps, more machines, more dangers waiting ahead. But stopping was not an option. His boots dragged through the dirt, scraping across broken stone. Every step felt like a mile. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes. Blood from his shoulder wound ran sticky and warm beneath his torn uniform. The pain was constant, sharp, and merciless. But Reeves carried more than his own weight. He carried 47 lives. And that thought drove him forward. From the high observation deck, the alien commanders watched with growing unease. "He cannot last much longer," one said, his voice low. "No creature can endure such strain," another agreed. "He should have fallen already," a third muttered, frowning. But Reeves had not fallen. Each time his knees buckled, he pushed back to his feet. Each time his body screamed to stop, he forced himself another step forward. His strength was not endless, but his willpower was something else entirely. The cubs had begun to notice. Where once they had whimpered and cried, now they were quiet. Their trust in him grew with every moment he refused to let go. Even the smallest, weakest of them, who had been too tired to move on their own, now leaned against him with a strange calmness. They understood in their own way this human would not abandon them. For many of them, it was the first time they had ever felt that kind of safety. The path ahead twisted into jagged terrain. Broken walls jutted upward, forcing Reeves to climb with cubs strapped across his chest and back. His hands bled as he pulled himself higher, the metal edges cutting into his skin. He gritted his teeth, careful not to let his weight crush the tiny lives clinging to him. At the top, he paused, chest heaving, vision swimming. The cubs stirred nervously, their little sounds brushing against his ears. Reeves whispered hoarsely, "It's all right, just catching my breath." He sat for a brief moment, letting his legs stop shaking. Then, seeing the way the cubs were watching him, worried, anxious, he forced a weak smile. "Don't look at me like that. I'm tougher than I look." The cubs tilted their heads, not understanding the words but sensing his mood. One feathered cub reached up and pressed its tiny hand against his cheek. Reeves froze, blinking at the unexpected gesture. The touch was small, fragile, but it gave him more strength than any weapon or command ever had. He nodded, pressing the cub gently back against his chest. "Yeah," he whispered, "I'll keep going. I promise." The march continued. Hours passed, though time felt twisted on the battlefield. The sun hung dim behind clouds of smoke. The air grew colder. Reeves's body ached in ways he had never known before. His shoulder wound throbbed with each step. His throat was dry, his lips cracked. Hunger gnawed at him, but he ignored it. The cubs stirred restlessly. Some made small sound of hunger. Others whimpered from thirst. Reeves felt a stab of guilt. He had nothing to give them but his strength and his voice. So he did the only thing he could. He began to hum. It was a low, steady sound, a human lullaby, one he remembered from his childhood. Though the words were lost to him, the melody was enough. The cubs stilled, listening. Their small bodies relaxed against him, their fears fading. The alien commanders heard the faint sound through their monitors. "He sings to them?" one asked in disbelief. "To comfort the weak?" Another scoffed. "This is not war. This is something else." None of them could explain it. But Reeves did not care what they thought. The cubs were calmer now, and that was all that mattered. The terrain grew worse. A storm rolled in, wind whipping ash into his eyes. Rain began to fall, cold and sharp, plastering his hair to his forehead. The ground turned slick beneath his boots, threatening to send him crashing down with every step. But Reeves bent forward, shielding the cubs with his own body. His uniform grew soaked, heavy, clinging to him like a second weight. Still, he marched on, each step louder than the storm in his ears. The cubs huddled against him, their small warmth pressed into his chest and sides. Some chirped softly, others growled in fear. Reeves whispered through the storm, I know, almost there." just a little farther. His voice was raw, but steady. From the observation deck, the alien commanders fell into uneasy silence. They had watched countless simulations before. They had seen soldiers abandon their wounded, leaders sacrifice their young, warriors prove their strength by walking alone. But never this. Never a soldier carrying 47 helpless young across an endless battlefield, bleeding and broken, but refusing to stop. One commander spoke quietly, almost to himself. "This is not strength as we know it." Another replied, just as softly, "No, this is something more dangerous." Reeves reached the next ridge. His body screamed in protest. His legs felt like iron. His arms trembled uncontrollably. He knew he was close to the edge of collapse. But then he looked down. The cub stared back at him. 47 pairs of eyes filled with trust. Not fear, not despair. Trust. And that was enough. Reeves planted his foot forward. Then another. The march did not end. The pain did not break him. Because he was not just carrying weight. He was carrying lives. He was carrying hope. And hope was heavier than anything else in the universe. But it was also the one thing no human would ever drop. The long march continued, step after step, until the battlefield itself seemed to bow to the will of one tired, bleeding, stubborn human who refused to walk away. The storm had passed, leaving the battlefield slick and heavy with mud. Broken machines lay scattered like corpses, their glowing eyes dimming in the rain. The silence returned, but Reeves did not trust silence anymore. He had learned what it meant. Silence meant danger waiting. Sergeant Daniel Reeves pressed forward. His boots sank deep into the muck, sucking at his every step. His back screamed with pain. His arms trembled from the endless weight. But still the cubs clung to him. Still he refused to stop. 47 small forms pressed against him. Scales, fur, feathers, all mixed together. They were not his children, not even a species. Yet he carried them as though they were his own blood. And the galaxy was watching. From the high observation deck, the alien commanders sat in tense silence. Their earlier smugness had faded. Where once they had spoken with confidence, now they whisper with doubt. "He should be dead," one muttered. "No soldier can bear this weight," another said. "And yet he does," a third replied, his voice uneasy. They watched the human stumble through mud, his body shuddering with every step. Yet when he slipped, he never let a cub fall. When his knees buckled, he cradled them tighter. And when his blood stained the slings across his chest, he whispered softly, calming the frightened little ones clinging to him. It was not the way of their kind. It was not the way of any species they knew. But it was the way of the human. The battlefield shifted again. Ahead, jagged towers of black stone jutted upward, sharp as blades. The path narrowed, forcing Reeves to move carefully along the ridge. The cubs sensed danger, pressing close, their little hearts beating fast against him. He whispered, "Easy now, one step at a time." The words were for himself as much as for them. Halfway across the ridge, the ground shook. A low rumble rose beneath his boots. Then, without warning, the stone split open. From the fissure crawled more predators, machines built for the hunt. Their bodies gleamed with wet oil, their jaws serrated, their eyes glowing red. Reeves cursed under his breath. His rifle was almost empty. His arms were full. His strength was fading. But he planted his feet and raised his weapon anyway. The first predator leapt. Reeves shifted his body, taking the hit on his shoulder. Pain flared white-hot, but he fired point-blank. The machine screeched and fell into the abyss. Another charged. Reeves swung his rifle like a club, smashing it aside. The impact jarred his bones, but he held steady, protecting the cubs with every movement. The alien commanders leaned forward, their voices sharp. This cannot be sustained. He is finished. No, look. He fights still. The cubs had stopped crying. Instead, they watched him. Wide alien eyes followed his every move, their fear replaced by something new, something that looked like courage. One small cub, with scaled skin and bright yellow eyes, bared its tiny teeth at a predator, hissing in defiance. Another, feathered and frail, let out a shrill cry, tried to mimic Reeves's battle roar. He noticed, even in the middle of the fight, bleeding and staggering, he saw it, and he smiled. "That's it," he whispered, ducking another strike. "Don't be afraid. You're braver than they'll ever know." The cubs pressed closer, no longer trembling. They trusted him, but more than that, they believed in him. And somehow, that gave Reeves more strength. The predators did not stop. They circled, snapping, waiting for him to falter. Reeves's legs shook, his vision blurred, but he would not yield. He fought on. He slammed his rifle into metal jaws. He kicked machines off the ridge. He used his own body as a shield, taking blows so that none of the cubs would feel them. And when his rifle finally clicked empty, he didn't stop. He tore a shard of stone from the ground and wielded it like a blade, striking with raw desperation. One by one, the predators fell. Sparks showered across the ridge. Metal shrieked against stone. Blood and oil mixed in the mud. When the last predator collapsed, Reeves stood trembling, his chest heaving. His body was torn and bleeding, his uniform shredded, his arms shaking from exhaustion. But the cubs were alive, every single one. From the observation deck, silence fell. The alien commander stared in disbelief. "No one has ever done this," one whispered. "He bleeds, yet he does not stop," another muttered. "Why? What drives him?" A third asked, voice trembling. There was no answer. Not yet. Reeves staggered forward. His knees nearly buckled. But the cubs steadied him, their tiny bodies clinging as though they were holding him up. He forced a laugh, bitter but warm. "Guess you're carrying me too, huh?" he said softly. The cubs chirped, growled, and hissed in their small voices as if answering. Reeves couldn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They were with him, and that meant he could not fall. Hours passed. The battlefield stretched endless. His wounds ached, his vision swam, but still he marched. Every step felt impossible. Yet he took it anyway, because giving up was not an option, because 47 small lives clung to him, and he had sworn silently to carry them all the way. The alien commanders, once confident of his failure, now whispered in fear. If one human can do this, what would an army of them do? Perhaps we have underestimated their kind. As night fell across the battlefield, the stars broke through the smoke. Reeves collapsed to his knees at the edge of a ruined wall. The cubs stirred, pressing against him, their small warmth keeping him upright. He looked at them, 47 pairs of eyes, glowing in the starlight. He smiled faintly, though his lips were cracked, his body broken. "You're safe for now," he whispered. "And as long as I'm breathing, you'll stay that way." The cubs answered with soft sounds, chirps, growls, clicks, cries. Together, it sounded like a chorus, not of fear, but of hope. Reeves leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. His body begged for rest, but his mind stayed sharp. He knew more dangers waited. He knew tomorrow would bring new trials. But he also knew this. He would not abandon them. Not ever. He had chosen his path. And against all odds, he would see it through. The battlefield stretched into silence again, broken only by the ragged breath of Sergeant Daniel Reeves. His body trembled with exhaustion, wounds burning, armor torn. He had carried the cubs through fire, through storms, through predators, and still they clung to him. 47 little lives. Still alive, still safe. He should not have made it this far. By every law of reason, he should have fallen days ago. Yet he marched, his boots sinking into ash and mud, his arms still cradling the young as though nothing else in the galaxy mattered. And perhaps nothing did. Above, in the great observation deck, the alien commanders were silent now. The arrogance that once filled the chamber had long since bled away. Their eyes tracked every step the human took, their expressions shadowed with disbelief. This was never supposed to happen, one whispered. He was meant to abandon them, said another. No one carries such a burden, no one. Yet still Reeves walked, every step defiance, every breath a refusal to yield. The landscape shifted again. The battlefield was alive, crafted to test cruelty, not mercy. Ahead, the ground broke into a shattered plain of glass and flame. Rivers of molten rock cut across the path, glowing orange and red. The air shimmered with unbearable heat. The cubs whimpered, their small bodies shrinking closer against Reeves's chest. He tightened his grip. His throat was raw. His voice cracked, but he whispered anyway. Don't look at the fire, babies. Look at me. Just me. I'll get you through. His boots burned with each step. His breath came in ragged gasps. His vision blurred from the heat. But Reeves did not falter. He moved carefully across narrow ledges, balancing every step while shielding the cubs from falling ash. The molten rivers hissed and boiled, spitting sparks that burned his skin. But he shielded them with his arms, his back, his body. His flesh blistered, his blood sizzled against the heat, but none of the cubs were touched. One by one, they pressed their tiny foreheads against him, their small voices chirping and clicking. They tried to comfort him as he had comforted them, and that kept him moving. The alien commanders watched in silence, their pride unraveling. Look how he suffers, one whispered. Yet he does not release them. Another said, he could walk free. He could save himself. But he chooses them. And still none of them could understand why. At last, Reeves stumbled to the final stretch of fire and collapsed to his knees on solid ground. The cubs clung tighter, pressing against his chest. He coughed, his lungs raw from the smoke, but he forced himself upright again, because the battlefield was not done. From the shadows ahead came the sound of grinding metal. Reeves raised his head, sweat stinging his eyes, and saw it. The final test. A Titan. The machine was larger than a building, armored in black steel, its eyes glowing like burning suns. Its arms ended in blades long enough to split tanks. Its steps shook the ground as it advanced. The cubs whimpered in terror. Reeves looked down at them, then back up at the towering predator. His rifle was gone, his armor shredded, his body broken. He had nothing left except his will. From the observation deck, the alien commanders leaned forward, eyes wide. This is the end, one said. No being could face that, another replied. He must break now. He must. But Reeves did not break. He rose to his feet, every muscle screaming. He set his stance, cradled the cubs close, and glared at the machine with bloodshot eyes. You want me? He whispered. You'll have to go through me first. The Titan roared, a sound like grinding mountains, and charged. Reeves ran forward to meet it. The battle was chaos. The Titan swung its blade arm, and Reeves twisted aside, barely avoiding the strike. The shock wave hurled him into the dirt, but he rolled to protect the cubs, absorbing the blow with his own body. He coughed blood, his vision spinning. But he stood again. The machine's foot came down like thunder. Reeves dove, dragging the cubs with him, landing hard on his shoulder. Pain screamed through his bones, but he forced himself upright. Again and again the Titan struck. Again and again Reeves rose. His blows were nothing to machine, bare fists slamming against steel. But he fought anyway. He fought with everything he had left, because quitting meant death for them all. The cubs cried out, not in fear, but in anger. Their small voices filled the battlefield, as though lending their strength to him. Reeves roared, slamming his broken fist against the Titan's armor one last time. And the battlefield froze. The world flickered. The Titan dissolved into smoke. The rivers of fire vanished. The cracked earth smoothed into steel. The test was over. Reeves collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, every bone in his body begging for rest. The cubs pressed against him, unharmed, still alive. He had done it. He had carried them all. The observation deck lit with silence. The alien commanders stared, shaken to their cores. He completed it. One whispered, "Impossible. No one carries all 47. And yet he did." The eldest of them, silent until now, leaned forward. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. "Now I see," he said. "We thought this was a test of strength, a test of survival. But to the human, it was never about himself. It was about them. He carried the weak not because it gave him advantage, but because it was the right thing to do." The others shifted uneasily. For the first time, fear tinged their voices. If one soldier can do this, what would an army of them do? What kind of species breeds such resolve? The answer hung heavy in the air. Humans. On the battlefield floor, Reeves finally slumped back against the steel wall, cradling the cubs in his arms. His vision blurred, his breath shallow, but he smiled faintly at the small lives looking up at him. "You're safe now," he whispered. "All of you. I told you I wouldn't let you go." The cubs chirped, growled, and hissed in their strange chorus, their eyes wide with trust and awe. For them, he was no longer just a soldier. He was protector, shield, parent, and for the watching galaxy, he was something even greater. Proof that humans were different. Proof that humans carried what no one else would. Proof that, when all others abandoned the weak, a human would bleed, fight, and rise again. And in that proof, the galaxy trembled, because now they understood. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Not ever again.